over the next half an hour, what I hope you'll take away is a concrete sense of how a tool like Magic Notes can help you close a laptop or put the pen and paper down and focus on the relationships in front of you, while still being able to walk away with accurate, usable notes that speak to both good practice and reporting obligations. So that is what we're here for. Chloe, over to you.
Great, thank you so much. And yes, really excited to be here as well. I'm Chloe, I'm partnerships lead at Beam, and my role is leading on our work in Australia, supporting children's, families and youth services. Let me share my screen and we can get started with our presentation today and what we'll be covering. So yeah, very quick overview. We'll spend the first 10 minutes a bit around our background and mission. And then onto the exciting part, we have a live demo to show you. That will be the next 10 minutes. And then leaving plenty of time at the end for our discussion and Q&A. But starting with, as Watson alluded to there, we're really here today to kind of share how we've been having real impact across three of probably of the most common challenges that we hear across the children and human services sectors. The first is that, there is a real imbalance with how we spend our time on admin. Secondly, around the record quality and ensuring that record quality there is a real challenge as well. And thirdly, around the retention and recruitment and the well-being of our staff. Now, before we go any further, I'd love to kind of quickly gauge in the chat, I know it will be very much all three of these are conflicting pressures, but if there is one that's real leading priority right now around admin, quality or well-being, that would be great to just have some initial engagement in the chat to understand what the focus is for people at the moment. So my colleagues will follow that and we'll pick that up in a minute. And coming back to, I said there, we spend a lot of time with children, youth and family services, and we consistently see the same challenges. On the admin efficiency, I know that you're doing case notes after every visit, incident reports within 24 hours, you've got courts reports, carer records, DEX reporting, and that documentation takes, huge chunks of time away from the direct support that we're able to do in our frontline work. The second is around the record quality. So you'll know yourselves when notes are written up late, they may be rushed, they're inconsistent. It becomes a lot harder to clearly evidence in detail the risks that you're managing and, the progress and decision making that's gone on behind those individuals and families you're supporting, that the commissioner, the authorities and the funders really need to be able to review. And then the third is around the staff wellbeing. I know that this is really emotionally demanding work and that the weight of the paperwork, the admin and the compliance on top of that is really contributing to people feeling stressed, burnt out and really great people leaving the sector. And we're here today because we believe that those three pressures are actually all connected, but also solvable. Our own organisation and service was up against these three challenges and we needed to solve it. And what we've been able to do here is build market-leading technology for frontline teams. And we are quite unique in that aspect, as that we are the only organisation in the world to date that has really focused on building that technology for the frontline teams. So as I said, to give a little bit more background on, how it was our reality too, we've spent 10 years at Beam delivering human services to vulnerable individuals. So just as your teams do. I myself joined Beam 7 years ago and spent years as a caseworker supporting young people and families affected by housing and homelessness. So I really do intimately know myself kind of how difficult it is to be able to offer the right support that leads to those, ultimately those end goals and outcomes that we want for the people that we're supporting, and also understanding the required documentation and pressures that are such a big part of our role. And we needed to change that and we wanted to change that. This is a photo here of myself working with a young woman called Basayo, and it's someone I supported early in my career. At the time I met her, she was living in a hotel room with her son. and she'd just been granted her refugee status, and she wanted to work as a phlebotomist. And here we are on this picture. We are actually at the hospital who were going to be facilitating her training, and we were walking around the hospital, meeting the staff, seeing where she'd be doing her training. And it was actually the hospital that she went on to secure employment at. And at this time, being quite a new caseworker, I had something which I then realised was very rare, which was capacity. And, this meeting here, I was able to go with her because I had that time. Didn't have a full caseload. I wasn't spending so much time on admin or the incidents that were coming up. And I really remember from this visit that the conversation we had, it just felt so much more meaningful because of the environment it was taking place in, the fact that I wasn't even note taking in this session as we were walking around. And I think, actually, as I got busier, I couldn't have interactions like this. And that wasn't because I didn't care at all. It absolutely wasn't that. It was just, how busy I got with the day-to-day pressures of the role. And I often think back to, if I'd had technology and tools like this when I was a caseworker, how many kind of, better outcomes, more meaningful work and more rewarding work. I actually ended up leaving casework after several years because of some of those challenges. And I'm sure that resonates for some of you and the staff in your team as well. So, as I kind of mentioned there, that's my own experience with one individual, Basayo, but our team went on and, to support over 6,000 individuals with securing work and finding their own homes. And through those milestones, we were just, really exhausted by admin. It was kind of coming back to those problems I mentioned at the start around spending so much time on admin, the concerns around our record quality, and the staff feeling really stressed by it. And we really knew we needed to change it. So after, we shopped around for some tools and technology to help us, but we couldn't find what we needed that felt right for our frontline work. And so our organisation, we created our own technology that allows our frontline workers to do that more human work and that more person-centric part of our role. And through using those tools, we found ourselves regaining around 8 hours a week. And that really enabled us to start delivering, even better support, more outcomes, and ultimately the work feeling much more rewarding and better experiences for the individuals we were working with. And what happened over the last 2 years or so is that other organisations and agencies that we partnered with and were doing sessions with and multi-agency work saw the impact as well. And we're now working with over 200 mission-driven NFPs, similar to you, across, family, youth and children's, but also including kind of health, well-being, recovery, homelessness and housing there. You'll see some national, international logos there, the Salvation Army, and over 50,000 staff across the world, the UK, the US and Australia, are using these tools to be able to, reinvest the time that they lose to admin into the more meaningful work. And I'll go on here to kind of share a case study around one of the impact we've been having for, this is the UK's largest fostering group, employing thousands of staff and supporting thousands of young people each year. And what I want to talk about here with the tools is, initially starting with how it impacted their admin time. A report here, for example, that used to take 90 minutes to write up, through using the tools, they were able to really work on kind of the speed of completion and submission of getting that into their systems. And they got that down to kind of around 24 minutes to be able to, get that time back. So you can see just one example there. Also around, a real noticeable uplift in the quality and the consistency of the records. And for the manager who's auditing these records, that really reduces, the QA burden and the compliance risk with them all being standardized. But as well as the time saved, I want to kind of talk about, what that time actually gives back. And one of the social workers that we were supporting as part of this work, he was a few weeks into using Magic Notes, and he went out that morning to do a family morning visit before the family went to school of a young girl who was in a new fostering placement. And because of the time he had back, he didn't need to rush back to the office to write up his notes for this and other interactions. And with that time back, he then went on a walk and accompanied that young girl to school this morning. And, what he says about that is just, it's so powerful. He says, on that walk, the young girl she was singing and laughing, and he got so much more insight and kind of an honest window into how that young girl was settling into the placement in, walking in the outdoors than he kind of ever could have got from that meeting sitting in the living room with his notepad. And I think, it's really those interactions and those outcomes which is being facilitated by improving our capacity, improving the quality, and making his role so much more rewarding. I want to kind of tie that to our work, that's now going on in Australia. So beyond our work that we've been doing in the UK and the US, we've now been expanding into Australia, and our first flagship partner here has been Life Without Barriers. They've been rolling the tools out in teams that are providing support, doing well-being check-ins, income assessments, regular contact sessions, housing support, and the early results have been really powerful. We're just wrapping up those kind of initial evaluation at the moment, but to give you some kind of headline overviews and insights here, what they've seen is on average, staff get around 60% of time back on the admin that they've been spending. And that's giving back several hours a week. Another example I wanted to touch on is a report that they currently prepare, which on average before was taking staff around 9 hours to report. It's lots of case notes, it's letters, it's lots of different information that needs to be pulled into this one report. They've now been able to get that report down to around 4 hours per report. So, extra 5 hours back for the team a week is, really impactful. And critically here, everything is tailored for working in Australia. So everything is already fully compliant with Australian privacy principles. That means that the data is stored and processed on Australian servers. Of course, when you're using any tools related to AI, it's so critical that with the sensitive information we're handling, that data stays private and is never being used to train the AI models. And through this work, we have, now a bank of kind of resources that are able to kind of help local Australian-based organisations get up and running with using this technology from a data and security perspective. And myself, Joanna and Abby will all be in Australia from next month, being on the ground and supporting the rollout. And hopefully, as part of that, will be an amazing opportunity to actually meet some of you there and support your organisations as well. That's all on the kind of background and overview. Now what I'd love to show you is actually a live demonstration of the tools. We have Sharon from ACWA who's going to be kind of taking part in this today. So Sharon, are you there and ready?
I'm here. Yes, I'm ready.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
I've got my script.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So what Sharon and I are going to kind of role play now is we're going to show you, a brief insight into what the notes look like and how the tool works. So what we'll role play here is as a home visit meeting. Sharon is going to play the role of the support worker, and I'll be playing the role of the individual who is accessing support. So Sharon will ask me these questions. And what I want to show you is, actually how does Magic Notes work? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go onto my mobile. And, it does work on your laptop. It works, online as well. But for the sake of today and how, you work out in the community, you're likely going to have your mobile phone. And what we found with the work we were doing was, the work we're doing is we're in places where, you've not always got Wi-Fi. You've actually not even sometimes got signal. And for it to work offline is really important as well. And this does work offline. Getting into that technology also needs to be really easy and seamless. I don't want to be going into a meeting and sitting down with someone and kind of, faffing around with something that is, quite fiddly. Being really easy to record is really important here. So to get onto Magic Notes, it's not a piece of software or an app. It's going on to kind of a web address. So you go to, magicnotes.ai, and it's just like going to, ABC News. It's that simple to get onto the platform. Obviously, there's high security around your login, and that's done through kind of your email and verification processes there. But what I want you to be able to hopefully see here is you can see on my phone this pink button here which says record, and I'm going to press that in a minute, and that's how easy it is to start recording your conversations and sessions. Now, obviously, getting consent is critical, and you would have done that with the family and support that you're doing to record that conversation. And often when you explain, I'm going to record the conversation today, is that okay? Because, ultimately it will help with, writing up these notes quicker and getting better support for you and being able for me to engage today a lot more, that it's exceptionally high consent that we get here. So on that, we'll kind of get started now. So yeah, Sharon, if it's okay with you, I'm going to hit record and we will get started. So record. I'm going to put that. Hi, Sharon. Thanks so much for visiting me today.
Hi, Chloe. So I'm Sharon. I'm from ACWA, and I'm going to be your family support worker. So let's get started. First of all, can you just tell me a little bit more about you and your family, Chloe?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sharon. So I have 2 young children. I have a 4-year-old called Jessie, and I have a young baby called Nico, who is 6 months old. We've left the home that we were in at the minute. It wasn't suitable or appropriate to stay with my partner anymore. He was, drinking quite a lot and a number of other challenges with our relationship. So we're currently here at my mum's house, but it's a difficult situation. As you can see, the property is very small, and there is a bit of a hostile, just difficult environment with my mum. Our relationship hasn't been the greatest in the past, and the space for the children, and we really do need our own space. We've got a lot going on at the moment.
I can see that. I'm sorry to hear that your relationship isn't great with your mum, Chloe, but can you tell me a bit about who you have got in your support network and who your local community might be that you can turn to?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my mum's here and she has a partner called Martin. We don't get on that great, but I do have my sister, but she is about an hour away. So, we're here in Redcliffe and she's about an hour down the coast in Brisbane. I have a few friends from school still, but I wasn't able to finish my studies. I got pregnant when I was 17 and had Jessie. So it is hard at the moment, and that's about it.
Okay, I see. And how are you feeling at the moment in terms of your health and well-being? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, obviously the situation is really stressful. I'm struggling a lot with, Nico. He's just 6 months old, and whether I've had, postnatal depression or something, but I am feeling, incredibly low at the minute. Taking and care of myself is really difficult, a new mum and this situation, I feel really overwhelmed, to be honest.
Okay, so if we were able to get you some support going forward, is there an area that you'd like us to focus on initially?
Well, there's definitely a few things you can help me with. Jesse, my 4-year-old, he's having, quite a lot of tantrums and, emotional outbursts. He's very hyperactive. He hasn't been seen for ADHD or anything like that, but, his behavior is really difficult. With Nico, I know he's, had some feeding challenges. His weight isn't where it needs to be. Obviously he needs to start weaning soon, but I am just really overwhelmed by all of that. And then obviously looking at my housing as well, I know that's not going to be overnight. The area is so expensive. I'm, not working at the moment, but getting our own space would, massively help things as well. Thank you so much, Sharon. I will pause there. Thank you for taking part in that. What I've done there at the end of the meeting is, whether that was a 3-minute conversation you saw there, but it might be that you're, in a session for 60 minutes. It might even be a much longer meeting as part of kind of, a multi-agency and a disciplinary review there. after the meeting finishes, what I've done there is actually just hit save. So you don't need to kind of follow a script or anything like that. You just let that conversation kind of flow as organically as possible. And the kind of recording does all the work that it picks up. It's already ready for us to review. So what I'd love to do now is kind of flip the screen that I was sharing and show you what that has captured from that note. So let me just refresh my screen here. And I'm going to share this tab instead. And what I'd love everyone to do is just start to have a read of what it's picked up from that initial conversation between Sharon and I. I'm sure people have really different reading speeds and probably haven't finished that, but just in the interest of time, I'm just going to scroll down there so that you can kind of get a sense of some of the other output it's given. And I always like to kind of come back here and see people looking at the screen, hopefully kind of nodding along, and thinking that, you know, that's picked up a kind of very good, you know, first accurate draft of our conversation. So what I kind of want to show here is, you know, it's not just about writing notes fast, although obviously, you know, what it was able to do there was kind of generate that transcript really quickly. But it was also everything that happens after. So you saw there, you know, that was a few minutes conversation, and within, you know, 30 seconds or so, we were able to come on here and look at the notes. What it's done today is it's put on our general meeting template and given kind of the structure in a way that it feels the most intuitive. But what we're able to do here is we're able to work closely with your organisation, understand your forms and systems and the way you write things, and be able to kind of create custom templates where the way this is structured, the tone of voice, the output is all really bespoke to the way that your organisation works. So that's the initial output you get. But I guess it's not just the time saved from, you know, this initial record, but actually it's for kind of quicker follow-up as well. So what I'm going to show you here, I'm going to kind of come across to the AI assistant box here, and I'm going to write in here, draft a referral letter for housing support. I'm going to pop that in there, and it's able to help us, you know, use the information that's been captured to, you know, rewrite what you need for onward communication in seconds. You know, you can see here it's been able to really focus in on the work related to the housing piece, which is relevant for this organisation who will be helping with the onward support of housing. And, you know, something here which used to take, you know, at least, you know, maybe 10, 20 minutes, it really is helping that workflow get down to seconds. You can also kind of see, you know, coming back to it's how and when we do notes. So, you know, would I have got, or would Sharon have got in the car after that session and been able to write up the notes? Or would, you know, actually you're maybe going on to see the next individual, something critical comes up. You know, I myself know as a caseworker, sometimes I was doing those notes at the end of the day, maybe even in the evening, sometimes even at the end of the week and the weekend. And what happens there, you know, is the quality, you know, it can erode. And, you know, by using a tool like this, it's able to pick up everything. And feedback we have so often from individuals is it's picking up things that even I wasn't picking up in the meeting, because, you know, often this can be kind of complex and chaotic environments. And you can see here, you know, it's able to kind of draft that, you know, pretty much I'd say, you know, 95% plus quite instantly. But it's about having real kind of, you know, confidence in this when you come back to it, and it not just being kind of there and, you know, you're not able to check it. So here I can kind of show you that you can get a recording of the transcript. So you can come back in here and you can kind of see the transcript and exactly what's been said, but you can also play back that recording file as well. So you can really listen in to check kind of, you know, what was the tone of voice someone was saying at a certain time, what was maybe the context around this. And you can kind of see in parts of the transcript that, you know, it's able here to give citations. And that again can give you that real confidence and evidence for the, the commissioner as well, that, this is very evidence-based. It's not kind of synthesizing things that weren't said there. And that really helps with the kind of quality standards and evidence piece. Then kind of looking at, and thinking about, staff and individuals, I think so many people who do frontline work, they're there because, they love those interactions. And, naturally, I know that skill set for me is, much more being of a conversationalist rather than a typist, without the need for note taking in those sessions quite so critically and frantically. From that you can really get much better focus, the connection with a family, and ultimately what that leads to is, like I said with Basoyo, it leads to those better outcomes, and the work we get to do day to day is so much more rewarding. I think these tools as well, we've had feedback how powerful it is for staff with neurodiversities, where note taking is, an extra kind of heavy and admin burden as part of the job. We've had incredible feedback from people, with dyslexia and dyspraxia, as well as other needs around, that could be arthritis, it could be hard of hearing. These tools are really helping those individuals as well with their day-to-day role. The final thing I want to kind of show here before we pause for questions is the ability for reports. So, what you saw there was, us capturing one interaction, but yourself in your workload that, the case notes that you're doing are then going into, probably a final kind of progress outcomes report that might be for decks. And it might be, it will actually be kind of probably dozens of case notes. It might be letters, emails, conversations, observations over, a period of months. And compiling those reports are a really intensive and admin heavy part of your job. And what you can do in the system here is you're able to pull together all the kind of summaries into one report. So if I go into create report here and hit choose a template, and I hit maybe a child and family assessment, again, just like we can with those individual recording outputs, we can build individual custom templates, and we can add our notes here. So what I can do here is kind of add the notes from a few, these are all kind of, role play fake sessions or redacted information. I can add the notes from these 4 sessions to create a report. Building a report takes about a minute. So in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of show you one that we did earlier. And you can kind of see here that from these 4 notes, it's then able to pull together all that information. You can see, it's pulling together, into a really long form report. And, I only need to scroll here for you to kind of be able to see it's given, the profiles of the different children, the family history, and it's a much longer form report, which, as yourselves will know, is really important at kind of, whether it's, a review point or maybe the kind of end or wrap up there of the support. And it's very much the same principles as that individual reporting and recording. What I'm going to do is I'm kind of, there's so much more I could show you here, but I think, in the interest of time and kind of getting onto the discussion, what I'll do is actually kind of pause here for now and probably open the floor to questions, and I can always come back to this and share some more features if it feels relevant. So Sharon, if it's okay, I'll kind of hand to you to chair some of the questions that might be coming in.
Well, unfortunately, we are running very short on time, but there is one in the chat, which is how frequently do hallucinations occur?
Yeah, it's a great question, and is something that really we needed to kind of, solve for the work we're doing with frontline AI. We don't have hallucinations appear. It's critical that actually what is being brought into the summaries and the reports is fully evidence-based, and that's why with those citations that you were able to see there in the document, it's really important for giving that evidence and that reassurance that this isn't being hallucinated. If there's ever a section in a report that you've built and it says, maybe it was around health or housing, if that information isn't there, we will put not mentioned if it's information you need, rather than just omit that or not put it in, because it really is so important that it's not making opinion here. Actually, it's just synthesizing the facts that is heard, and as a professional and skilled worker, you're able to add in those extra insights.
Chloe, oh, sorry, Sharon. I'm just conscious we've probably got a minute or two. And I'm sure you're going to do this, but maybe wrap up with how people might learn more or contact you if you want to pop that in the chat. I think if I just go to the question in the chat, does it integrate well with other operating systems or CRMs?
Yeah, so thanks so much for saying that we're kind of, what people can do to follow up. If people would like to kind of follow up or find some more information, I'll just put my contact details on the screen there, or you can very quickly scan the QR code if you've got your mobile, and that will send me a very quick message. With integrations, how it works is it's very much AI that is human in the loop. So it's not just kind of being pushed to your systems with an integration. It's for the individual worker. This is a tool for them to be able to use to support them with their, their admin and efficiency. So they are reviewing the work, and currently to get it into your systems, the way that's done is via copy and paste. That said, we are looking at building integrations with some of the most kind of, frequently used platforms, and we can explore that on a kind of individual organizational basis.
Thanks, Chloe. We will need to wrap it up there. I'm sure if there are other questions or people want to have a further discussion with you, they've now got your contact details, so I'm sure people will reach out. We are very thankful for you coming today. I know how early it is over there. If people didn't hear before, it's 5 a.m. in the morning in the United Kingdom. So thank you to your colleagues and Watson for that opening as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us. Have a good day.